like every time I see you, I just don't really see you. I just don't really see you. I just don't really. It feels like every night I need you. I just wanna believe you. I just wanna believe you. I just don't really. It feels like every time I see you, I just don't really see you. I just don't really see you. I just don't really. It feels like every night I need you. I just wanna believe you. I just wanna believe you. I just don't really see it. No.
Talk to me about the control that you have over your recordings, and then also like recording craft. Like you mentioned Logic, that's your DAW.
Yep. Yep.
Does it go straight from, you do it all in Logic and then like boom, then like you just that's
It sometimes is exactly like that. Like you
Mhm.
just like are like making a beat and you're like, oh dang, this is cool.
Right.
And then it's out in the world.
Yeah.
That's a lot of songs for me. I mean, I'd say most songs for me, that's how it goes. But
Wow.
for me, just as like in my process, I try very hard not to dwell on stuff.
Mm.
Like I don't want to, I wouldn't by any means call myself a perfectionist, but like
Mm.
also I don't want to be nitpicky, right? Like go back and constantly changing stuff. And also on the same tip, I have the sort of brain where if I start something, I have to finish it that day. That
Oh
in
wow.
turn leads to me doing most of my tunes within the day that I started them.
Oh my good. That is very encouraging for me.
Some people are like that, man. I'm telling you, it's just a way to
It's
be. I can't it's very hard for me to like get equally passionate about something when I like put it down and say like I have to take a break and then go back.
Yes. Yes,
I
you're
feel like
afraid that something will be different. Your mood,
exactly,
like the sun will be in a day, will be cloudy the next day. You'll
exactly.
you'll lose the ephemeral, the
Yeah,
nature of the moment, right?
it'll be 1 degree colder and I'll hate the song.
Now, to me, that runs counter to my thinking of the idea that an album takes 6 months to make, and on day
Yeah,
56, you're going in and all you're doing is tweaking the reverb, and
yeah,
it's not like
no,
that for you, is it? It's a little bit
no,
more sort of burst of creativity all at
yeah.
once.
In when I'm in album mode, it's definitely a burst of creativity.
That
Like
is
for
so
the
cool.
new project, I'd say I wrote like 6 out of 8 of those tunes within like a week. Sitting here getting a big old Dunkin' Donuts coffee and just diving in. Uh, that's how you gotta
That's
do
a
it.
great
Good move.
commercial for Dunkin' Donuts. The stocks just jumped 3 points. I got the Dow Jones on the sideboard here. We can't see it on the camera. You just see this going right up. Dunkin' Donuts
Dunkin',
stock.
y'all can take that for free. You can take that little clip for free. Just let me get a free big coffee sometimes.
So that's really interesting because you know I just that resonates with me. Your work
Yeah.
style. Your work
That's
style.
good to hear. That's comforting for me too, because sometimes I feel a little crazy with it. But
Well, as Terrell said, it's working.
yeah.
He's a wonderful human being.
Oh
What a
my God.
guy. What a great
We had the
person.
best time. That was an amazing. Me and my
Hmm.
girlfriend and I went to that shoot, and oh my God, he is an absolute joy to be around. He has a
Yes.
little schnauzer running around the studio. It's a party over there.
You said, I'm not as good as a lot of like really, really good singers, but I use my strengths to my advantage. I'm talking about your voice. Um, I loved that comment. I think that was one of many enlightening comments that you made on the show. Um,
Thank you.
let's talk about your voice. Um,
Okay.
because that's a comment that you made about your own voice, about those pipes.
This thing. This thing.
Imitation is the highest form of flattery in that case. If
Yes.
I'm ever channeling Terrell here, Terrell, if you ever watch this, I know you won't, but I'm staring right at the green dot, and I know you won't, but if you ever do, I'm a big fan of yours. Singing and vocal technique, I'm going to throw a bunch of things out, and then you could just talk about what resonates with you.
Cool.
Use of the voice, full voice, head voice, mixed, falsetto. You use your voice in a variety of ways. When you wail, because sometimes you use like a real wail,
Yeah.
WAIL, of course.
Yes. Yes.
You don't use marine mammals in your show.
Not a huge
That whale, not this whale, not
beluga.
that whale. Right. So when you use a whale, and I love that you don't use it all the time, but you use it sparingly, like a great, sort of Swiss Army knife. You only use that tool when it's going to have the maximal impact. But when you do, how do you do that, especially live and in concert, and not burn your voice out? Because I've heard you really go to town in some very high registers, and it doesn't seem to phase you at all in the show. So how do you do that and not burn your voice out? Because I could tell you that's coming from, I've done the same thing and then I couldn't sing 10 minutes later.
Yeah.
So that's a whole bunch of stuff. That's a whole bunch of stuff. So talk to me about any of that interests you and resonates with you.
Okay. So in terms of your most recent question, many times on our most recent tour, we played like 27 cities, and some of them we had like 4 nights in a row of shows. And I am never the kind of person to like take it light for the next one. Like, maybe we got a bigger city tomorrow, so I'm gonna like take it easy tonight. I've never been that kind of way.
Right.
And as far as the really high belty stuff, sometimes you just can't talk after a show. Like, sometimes you blow your stuff out, but I am big on drinking water and massaging my throat in the morning. I always,
really?
One of my private instructors at Berkeley was very adamant on me like actually like stretching and kneading out neatness in my throat, and that has gone a long way for me. Just keeping it loose all the time, like just as you would with any muscle.
Right.
And it got me thinking about a lot of times we think about our voice as like this unreachable entity like within ourselves, but there's a lot of steps that we could take to like take really good care of it. And just like, it's not to say go above and beyond like vocal rest like all the time, but just do what is right. And I was doing a lot of I'm big on the steam, especially in the cold cities. I was steaming out quite a bit.
That makes sense.
Which just always helps.
That makes a lot of sense.
And another one of the points that you had that stuck out to me, I think you called it sotto voce. I think that, you're right in saying that my answer is going to be practice, but specifically when I lived in the dorms at Berkeley, there was a policy against practicing in your dorm room, because we had practice rooms available that were like soundproof, so that for the louder instrument, so there was no drums in the dorms, no horns or anything like that. But as a predominantly a singer, if I wasn't like trying to play an instrument really, sometimes you just like sing around your room. And in an effort to be quiet, I think that in turn was a lot of practice of that sort of half voice of mine, because it was quiet enough that it didn't disturb my roommate or my neighbors. And just I lived there for 3 semesters, so I got a lot of practicing. Yes.
Thank you, Berkeley, for that policy. It's done wonders.
Yes, indeed.
It's really done wonders. I did not know that was going to be your answer.
Also, I think with that point, I also think a lot about how you were saying, like the Swiss Army knife of sorts. Like, just funny enough, somebody that has taught me a great lesson in that front is actually Kendrick Lamar. I'm a huge
Kendrick
hip hop fan. I have been since the middle school days, and it always was a big part of my artistry and my affinity for like even producing. I attribute a lot of hip hop producers and acts, but one thing that Kendrick does that is always ear grabbing, specifically, like I'll use To Pimp a Butterfly as an example, because that's one of my favorite, I'd say probably my favorite hip hop album ever. His delivery is always different. He's always like, and it's whether sometimes he attributes it to he's like being a character, so to speak, like outside of himself. He's making you think. Like he'll go from to regular voice, like and that has always been so just capturing to me, like or captivating, I should
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
It's just a very interesting thought, like to, you know, the human voice is more versatile than most instruments, like, and with it being a part of us.
Yes.
And I love seeing people really stretch out the things you can do with it, and it's always
Yes.
been a point of interest to me.
Yes, yes, yes. And also yes. And that leads very nicely into the other half of my singing and vocal technique thing, which is your facial artistry, which I'm
Yeah,
sure has been pointed out to you, and I'm sure you're
yeah,
already quite aware of it.
yeah.
It is one of the great, exciting visual features of your artistry. I'm absolutely
Yeah.
serious.
Thank you.
It's gotten to a point where I'm starting to turn on my phone and flip in the mirror mode and see what I look like when I sing,
Yeah,
and really any serious singer should be doing that.
a
But I'm
1000%.
experimenting with sort of
Yeah,
trying little
yeah.
lip curls and
That thing has always, I've been doing that my whole life, and I don't know why. Like, just I'm a firm believer in however you gotta make it sound good. If you gotta make a really ugly one, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Absolutely. I mean, sometimes you're gonna need to sing out the side of your mouth, or you're gonna need to, because also, particularly when you're on stage, like I'm exhausted. So like you really gotta, you know, like I've been saying the whole time, my hyper competitiveness, I'm psyching myself up internally, that sometimes it's why I'm like the stomping and the moving and the dancing is all just as a way to, and the facial artistry, as you put it, is all just a way to get me going. And I find it very funny when people, you know, I mean, obviously I've heard it plenty of times before about the faces, but I'm a big believer in however you got to make it sound good, you know.
I'm
You got
connecting your facial artistry to what you were saying before about the idea that these palettes that we have, and most people don't use them all. And I'm certainly, I've watched myself video of myself singing, and it looks like I'm using about 5% of my possible, and I
right.
feel like you're using something like 90 something percent of your possible, of your facial arrangements.
I think a lot about you know, the like the choir sort of NISMA, and how, I mean, it's, there's a lot of rules at NISMA, we both know.
Yes, yes.
And a lot of times that would be a point of interest, that I was singing out the side of my mouth, or maybe I was moving, like not standing up perfectly straight.
Are you saying to me that you would go to NISMA and the judges' comments would be obsessing over these features of your
Yeah,
performance?
yeah, I
Is
mean,
that what's
more,
happening?
yeah, maybe a little bit.
Were they critical comments?
No, I mean, never you know, never anything that was like too you know, I always did well at NISMA, like nothing that was ever like
So they were pointed out in a
outside.
positive way.
No, they would point it out in, like, if I could change it, like, you sang it
Ah,
great, kid, but if I
but
could switch anything about you, you're standing a little crooked. And I'd
I
be
see.
like,
I see.
all right, lady. You
I
know.
see. And I think this is a lesson in there's an idea that here this could be a strong foundation.
Mhm.
Do this with your body, limit yourself to these things, but
Yes.
once you outgrow those
Right.
limitations, don't stay in those handcuffs if you've
Exactly.
outgrown them.
It does
um,
teach you a lot of good lessons, and, you know, it's not to say that I'm knocking it in general, but it made me upset in my youth. Definitely, I definitely wanted to do my own thing, and I think that was my problem with a lot of traditional learning. I briefly took piano lessons when I was 7, and I hated it, and then went back and learned it myself a few years later. Similarly with guitar, um,
yeah.
and I mean, choir was really the only thing that taught me like traditional music learning, I guess. And there was a lot of great lessons that I took from it, but there was also a lot of things that I had a little bit of a disdain for.
Yes, and I think education is always striving at its best. It's always striving to realize that there are as many learning styles in the room as there are learners in the room, and
Absolutely.
so as the teacher, you realize that you try to do things in your teaching practice that will speak to the different students, and there is the reality that you don't hit every student the same depth, right? That is the reality of teaching. But interesting, just jumping back to NYSSMA, the idea that none of that worked for you, that didn't discourage you. You discarded it if it didn't apply to you. I think a lot of kids would get that feedback and would go, oh, I got to be doing this. And it would just kill the joy, and it would just,
I agree.
And you never let that happen to you.
I was especially, that was right around the time that I had found, like, I was playing keys outside of school. Like, my affinity for music wasn't solely in the school. And I think that helped me. Just being, like, not really a great student ever in life at most classes. Like, I just had a general disdain for school-related things, maybe subconsciously. And that helped me be more positive about it, I guess, But I mean, obviously sometimes you get a fun teacher, and it definitely gives you, I mean, I don't think you understand how much the Boys to Men thing changed my life in middle school. Like, for real. It really, I mean, I've had a good bit of choir directors and music teachers in my day now, and including Berkeley professors and such. And I mean, there are few moments in my musical life that I can recall hearing and being like, nah, I could do that. I want to do that. Like, I could definitely do that. And I think that when you did I Do by Boys to Men, I was watching that up on the risers probably, and I was like, oh man.
So what we're talking about is around 2010.
I didn't even know that song either. That really, I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No.
I didn't even know that song, and that like put me onto Boys to Men, like, at all.
Well, it's so funny how one song, how we intersect, how we sort of almost crash into an artist, via one particular song, and that was the song for you. For me, the song was Thank You. So when I was the 8th grade guy, and I heard Thank You by Boys to Men, with all of these things like the modal interchange and the tight 4-part harmony, and just the same thing it did to you. It just completely changed my understanding of everything.
Everything about it. Like, it probably was some of my first exposure to a lot of the theory topics that we talked about today. Like, especially just the, like modal interchange and all that. I remember it so vividly, hearing that session and being, oh my God, that's all him? That's just him. You could do that on a computer program.
So meaning me, of course, simply recreating what they wrote and what they made. But still,
I mean, just the fact that it was you multi-tracked at that time, like as a 12-year-old, I was like, what?
Feels like every time I see you, I just don't really see you. I just don't really see you. I just don't really. It feels like every night I meet you, I just wanna believe you. I just wanna believe you. I just don't really. It feels like every time I see you, I just don't really see you. I just don't really see you. I just don't really. It feels like every night I meet you, I just wanna believe.